I mean, what a ridiculous week for the sport of basketball. College, NBA, obviously, really the weekend in general this past weekend was just ridiculous. You can't talk about the sport of basketball without talking about the Luka AD trade. I was already staying up late, but I was just trying to watch Gonzaga, St. Mary's late night and then like go to sleep. I was already in bed, like basically eyes closed. But no, of course, the craziest trade in sports history. Like legitimately, I thought about every single sport, NFL, MLB trades, NBA trades, of course, KD stuff, but I really couldn't think of a trade that was a bigger magnitude, especially when you think about how surprising it was, and not a single person outside of the few people in the negotiating room had any idea what was going on. But the Mavs really said, you know what? Luka, he's 25. He's entering his prime. He's one of the 5 best basketball players in the world. He's proven that he can win multiple MVPs and take teams to the NBA Finals, which he was fresh off of his first Finals appearance, which is what the Mavs want to do, is win with him. They said, you know what? The fitness, the defense, we don't really care if he's supposed to be one of the only untouchable players in all of sports in the entire world. We can't win with him, even though we just got to the finals. Mavs GM can think whatever he wants. I don't doubt that the Kyrie and AD Mavs team, after maybe a couple more moves, will be decent enough and like a somewhat dangerous playoff team. But trading away Luka Doncic in his current form at his current age to the freaking Lakers is hilarious. It's actually ridiculous. As a Hawks fan, it makes me happy. I'm not going to lie, because the Hawks have gotten flamed for the draft night trade between Trey and Luka, and now the Mavs don't have Luka, so I guess the Hawks won the trade. All right, on to the college stuff. Who's the most dangerous team in the country peaking at the right time? It's obviously Texas Tech. It's 100% Texas Tech, so let's talk about Texas Tech. This team is made up of straight killers. You know JT Toppin's good. You know Darian Williams is good. He hit the shot, I think, to tie the game to go into overtime and regulation at Houston. Chance McMillan has been awesome. Elijah Hawkins is so tough, and I love Christian Anderson's game. All of those guys in the last like 10 to 12 games have really stepped up, and especially in big moments like you saw over the weekend at Houston. It just makes them so tough to defend when you think about how balanced all their threats are. Houston win was absolutely insane. You lose your head coach and your best player and leading scorer to a ridiculous ejection call 4 minutes into the game. Like, absolutely absurd. And somehow in a game that felt like a war, like a bloodbath out there, you find a way to will your team to victory. I already like Texas Tech, but that win like really moved me. They're 17-4. Their only loss in 2025 was that wild Iowa State overtime game that they probably should have won. And if they did win that game, we'd be talking about them right now as like a top 5 team in the country after the Houston win. I have them in the top 10. We've been waiting for like this big statement win. The Iowa State game would have worked. This Houston game works. The metrics have loved them all season long. They're proving that. They're the hottest team in the country. They're probably about a 4 seed right now, but they're playing their way very easily onto the 2 and 3 seed conversation. And my opinion on the JT Toppin ejection specifically, that really was crazy. Like, it might be the worst flagrant 2 or ejection call I have ever seen in my entire existence. Like, I'm not even joking. JT Toppin goes to whip a cross-court pass. He jumps up and like inadvertently kicks his leg into the defender. I think it was JoJo Tugler's legs. Like, completely inadvertent. Completely. So if you want to give him a flagrant 1 or whatever because it's excessive contact and force, that's fine, because you're giving a free throw in the ball, like whatever. But a flagrant 2, you need to have like serious intent. There was 0 of that in that play. So to eject him, especially that early in the game, was crazy. And honestly, Grant McCasland getting ejected, the Texas Tech coach, like, I'm all for that. If I am a Texas Tech fan, I'm happy he does that, because he needs to make it a bigger deal than it was. You saw how surprised he was on the sideline when they were showing the review, and they said that he was going to be ejected, JT Toppin, and Grant McCasland stood by his guys, and he stood by what he knew was right, so I respect that. Where does Cooper Flagg rank on your personal list of all-time freshmen? The game comes so effortlessly to him. Off the top of my brain, I'd say definitely top 5, maybe even top 3 or top 1 realistically by the end of the season. We got to see how it all plays out for sure. I'm thinking about Melo, Michael Beasley, Zion, Trey, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis. With the path that he's on, being able to have such a 360 impact on every single game, every single night, and the path that Duke is on, absolutely cleaning through the ACC and maybe the best team in the country or one of the best teams in the country, he's on pace to get to that number 1 spot without a doubt when you put it all together. But when we talk legacy, like, we got to see how the whole season plays out. We got to see how the team does in the tournament, especially because they're going to have such ridiculous expectations, but he's on a path to maybe be the best freshman ever. Right now, who's your National Player of the Year? Cooper Flagg or Johni Broome? Who do you think will win end of the season? It is not easy to decipher between the two. I think it's pretty damn close to dead even right now, even though most of the media says that it's like definitely Cooper Flagg. Auburn and Duke are the 2 best teams in the country, and it's really not that close at all. And these 2 guys do everything for 2 of of the best teams ever. They are both leading their teams in points, assists, rebounds, blocks. I think steals for both of them too. Every single analytical site and the numbers will say that it's Cooper Flagg by like a very small margin. But if I had to vote right now as of today, I would vote for Johni Broome. When you think about the SEC versus the ACC, whether you care about data, numbers, and analytics or not, even with the eye test, it's pretty clear to understand that the SEC is lengths above the ACC, and not only in top end quality, but when you think about the fact that there's 14, 15 potential tournament teams in the SEC, legitimately good teams, and there's 4 or 5 in the ACC, like you have nights where, not nights off per se, but in the ACC, like you have easy days, 100%. And Johni has not slowed down one bit from out of conference, where they played a really tough schedule also to SEC play. Maybe that's not fair to Coop because like you play who you play and who's in front of you, and he has been great all year. He did struggle a bit earlier in the season against some of the other top teams. And I think the narrative has pushed towards Cooper closing the gap and even taking the lead now because of Johni's like couple of weeks that he missed with injury that I really don't think holds any weight at all because he barely missed time. And if he hadn't missed that time, I think Johni Broome would be the odds-on favorite right now because it would have always been his award to lose until he loses it. Team success is obviously going to play a big part in this. If one of them falls off at all, the other one's going to have a huge edge if their team can stay at the top. I think Cooper Flagg is going to end up winning the award, but like I said, as of today, I'd give it to Johni Broome by like a really small hair. Is the ACC being this awful going to hurt Duke come March? It definitely does to an extent, but I honestly wouldn't worry. Like, if you think Duke's win the national title, I wouldn't let the ACC's quality take you away from making that your pick. History has proven that you need to come from at least a decently good conference to win in March and also compete and win a national title. But like I have said many times, Duke is one of the highest rated teams of all time. As the ACC is not that good, they have to win games by massive margins to be at the level and the performance rating and efficiency levels that they are at. The ACC is also probably going to get at least 4 teams in the tournament. Duke played a tough out-of-conference schedule. They're the only team in the country to beat Auburn. So if you're worried about them being battle-tested, like they've proven enough. But I understand the idea of leading up to March, you're playing the easiest part of the schedule that you have in your entire season. So does that soften you up and kind of not have you prepared to play those other Big 10, SEC, and Big 12 teams? Like, I get it, but for Duke, I really wouldn't worry that much. We still have hope in Mark Pope after the Arkansas loss. Let's just talk about the Arkansas-Kentucky game and the fiasco, the Cal fiasco in general. It was weird. I'm not going to lie. It's been weird seeing Coach Cal wear anything but Kentucky blue. It's been weird seeing him wear red even in the offseason and his pressers, and like it didn't feel real for a while until like one of the scrimmages. But seeing Coach Cal in Rupp Arena wearing red coaching against Kentucky is so strange. And it was just one of those off nights for Kentucky that, to be fair, they experience way too often. Their consistency is not there where it needs to be. For how good they are, especially offensively, when you think about this game, the Clemson, the Georgia, Ohio State losses that they had, like, they just shut off and beat themselves, and that's going to be bad for the postseason. When you have to play 4 games in a matter of like 10 days and you have to win all of them to keep your season alive, like, they're clearly going to have a game where they completely flop, or at least they could go out there and beat some of the best teams in the country, if not the best teams in the country, 105 to 100, but then they might show up the next day and lose to a mid-major 65 to 60. It kind of reminds me of Kentucky before this Kentucky with Coach Cal for very, very different reasons. Coach Cal was just kind of like letting his guys go, and they would obviously lose to any decent scheme or prep. This team has great X's and O's. They're very schematically sound, and they're really good. So it's frustrating to see that because they just rely on their pace and their offensive firepower so much. When they have an off night, they beat themselves. It's that simple. The big win for Arkansas. They're not in the tournament yet, but they're definitely not out of reach at all. They're probably like on the radar, maybe next 4 out. But in the SEC, they're going to play some of the best teams in the country basically every other night. So you have a lot of opportunities for big wins. And if you lose in decent margin, it really doesn't hurt you that much. It could be one of those teams that has like 13, 14 losses getting into the tournament and like the play-in or something like that. The other thing I want to say is about the ex-Kentucky players. I think it's weird. Like, it's really not that much of an issue when like the ex-Kentucky players are going to visit Cal at Arkansas and they're seeing the practice and they're like at Arkansas games sometimes. Like, I really don't care that much. It's fine. But like Ty Washington tweeting about the Kentucky fans, like talking shit to them, is so weird to me because like he played for Kentucky. Like, those were the fans that rooted for you. It's one thing to say like Coach Cal's my guy, kind of like Reed Shepherd was, even though that was also kind of weird wearing like an Arkansas shirt and Kentucky shorts, and he's from Kentucky and he's a UK fan his whole life and he's a Kentucky Gatorade Player of the Year. But that was less weird than the thing like Ty because like Ty's talking shit to the Kentucky fans, and then he has the Kentucky fans quote tweeting him and talking shit back saying you lost to St. Peter's, but that's their team also. It's weird. It's kind of uncomfortable. Like, I understand Kentucky fans are probably upset, and that's why they kind of feed into it. But the ex-player stuff is a little weird, especially because they're rivals. And now it's like a newfound massive rivalry, which is kind of fun. St. John's basically in the driver's seat to win the Big East. Also, can Xavier be a first four? Let's just look at the Big East entirely. I've talked a lot about St. John's. I am not convinced that they're like this clear number one team in the Big East, and it's not even close and out of question right now. That's ridiculous. But if I had to pick a team right now, they would be the best team. They're playing the best ball, especially in conference. But them, Marquette, UConn still, and I'd probably put Creighton are a top four on their own, in my opinion. I don't think any of them are going to be national title contenders or going to be playing for the title in April or whatever that last Monday is. But can they make tournament runs? Obviously, Big East teams have done that time and time again in recent years. But this year, you have those same three teams with St. John's, a group of four that are the clear top teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament for sure. But they're not like these overwhelmingly amazing teams, it feels like. But I just don't think the Big East has that top end quality it usually has. I do think Xavier could sneak in. They're on the radar, similar to teams like Arkansas that I mentioned earlier. They have work to do for sure. Their margins are thin. They can't lose bad games, and they're going to have to beat some of these top four teams in the Big East for Xavier to push into the tournament field. Is GCU back? I mean, yeah, kind of. GCU started the season off with really good expectations. They were supposed to be like the best mid-major in the country, a team that maybe loses 2 or 3 games all year long, but they were not only dealing with a ton of injuries and guys not being there like Tyon and stuff like that and Duke Brennan, which just kind of is what it is, and you play and you try to win as much as you can no matter what. But they also just like weren't playing well. Even when their guys came back, they've had games and weird losses that are like very uncharacteristic of them. Like they're a power level team basically playing in the WAC. They should be able to be winning 95% of their games, even they're out of conference schedule when you look at it. But their last 12 games, they're 11-1. Their only loss was to Utah Valley at Utah Valley, who's having a great year, so shout out to them. They just got massive wrench against UVU at home. Like they pretty much dismantled them and proved that like this is GCU's WAC still while they're still here before they leave the conference. Like it's still their league to lose. I'd say they're on pace to get back to the tournament for, I think it's going to be the 3rd year in a row. I think they'd probably be around a 13 seed by the time that they would hypothetically win the WAC conference tournament on top of the rest of the conference season right now. Under my head, I say GCU is going to be back in the tournament again as a 13 seed. I got a lot of questions and comments about Rob Wright, and rightfully so. He is awesome. He deserves to be talked about in his own little segment. Baylor backcourt injuries and issues have given Rob Wright, and really Baylor, I think as a team, a huge opportunity, and he has taken full advantage of it. Really needed his presence and pace control and even explosive scoring at times, and he plays like a vet. Like he's completely in control. All the veteran point guards in the country like Braden Smith, Ryan Nemhard, like go down the line, he fits in the last few games. Like you watch him play, he looks like he's one of those guys. I think he has solidified a massive role for himself, and I actually am happy that he's not on draft radars a ton right now, because I want him to come back. I want him to come back, have a full offseason and a full season of prep to literally be an All-American next year. Like as a sophomore, Rob Wright stays at Baylor. He will probably be an all Big 12 player, All-American. Like he's that good, and he's been that good, and he's finally getting like consistent opportunity. And Baylor needs him, so they're going to keep playing him, obviously. How has Aday Mara's emergence changed UCLA as a team? It's been incredible. Coming into college a couple years ago, I held a lot of long-term stock in Aday Mara, and I still do, honestly. I was just like waiting for those moments for Mick Cronin just to like let him go and like unleash him. Last 4 games, he's doubled his playing time. He's putting up double-digit scoring outputs, a double-double on one of the nights. He's got an insane amount of blocks in the last 4 games. And in those 4 games, UCLA is literally the number 1 most efficient offense in the country, which is exactly the opposite of what UCLA has been all year. They're 6th in the country in 2-point percentage and in blocks. Offensively, he's 7'3". He can move pretty well. He's got decent craft, so he draws a lot of attention to himself to open up space for the rest of the team to play, and that's why their offense is flourishing, as well as just being a damn problem and getting his and just giving another layer and differentiating factor to their offense. And defensively, he's 7'3", and he can move, and he's got great shot blocking instincts. So there's really no way that he doesn't end up playing 20 minutes a game, or if not more, towards 30 the rest of the season, as long as his health holds up. I'd love an MVC update specifically about UIC, who's beaten both Drake and Bradley now. Very true. The MVC rocks. I've always said that. It's one of the best quality basketball leagues in the entire country. Power, mid-major, whatever. This year, it's been Drake and Bradley as the top 2 for basically the entire season, there can definitely be other teams that emerge. They've both taken some pretty, I'd say, uncharacteristic losses or hot and cold, inconsistent games and losses, especially Bradley. Now they've taken a couple really bad ones. UIC, like we said, has beaten both Drake and Bradley. There's 8 teams in the MVC that are within 2 games of each other right now with a really long way to go. I think Bradley has the most explosive upside probably because of their offense, their three-point shooting, their balanced scoring attack, but they have taken some terrible losses. They've lost a couple games by way past double digits, a couple by 20 that it really doesn't feel like them, but maybe that's just kind of what they are and inconsistent. Drake has kind of set the course the entire year. They took 2 back-to-back losses early in conference play, but they've kind of been steadying the ship and riding the ship since then. I'd still take my chances that it's going to be one of those 2 in the NCAA tournament come March, because I do think that they still are a pretty big gap of quality-wise and eye test-wise better than the rest of the league. I got to shout out to my boy Bennett Sturts over at Drake. Ain't nobody talking about him on the national level. He gets some love because he's having an incredible year, but he is legitimately one of the best mid-major players in the entire country. And if Drake is on the path that they're on and they end up with 2 losses going into the NCAA tournament, like, he probably won't get All-American consideration, but he should be thrown around in there. And like I said last week, I'm going to give you underrated matchups to watch this week, underrated games, non-big time top 25 power games, because everyone's going to see that. You're going to see that on social media and from ESPN and whatever. I want to give you the games that really get you prepared for March and get you to really appreciate and watch and understand the different layers of college basketball around the country. Thursday night, I'd watch the Summit League. There are some really dangerous teams, really fun players and schemes like St. Thomas, Omaha's on fire, South Dakota State, North Dakota State. Friday night, A10, gotta watch Dayton VCU. That's gonna be an awesome game. Gotta watch SLU and St. Joe's, another awesome A10 game that's gonna be right after that. And then Saturday night, I'm telling you, if you ain't doing anything, I think it's 10 p.m. Eastern time, UC Irvine and UC San Diego, 2 of the best, if not the best mid-majors, true mid-majors in the entire country. Get the rematch. UC Irvine won the first one. UC San Diego is awesome. It's their first year that they're eligible to be in the tournament. Watch that Big West game on Saturday night. It's going to be awesome. That's going to wrap us up for this week's Q&A. I appreciate y'all for watching, especially if you're here at the end, as always. And if you're not subbed and subscribed and notifications, do that because you're clearly watching with intent and you want to see all this. You want to see more of it. So I'm going to keep trying to pump it out for y'all all season until March. I hope this week in the sport of basketball is just as crazy as last week was. It won't be. It won't be because Luka Doncic ain't getting traded. LeBron ain't getting traded. And SGA ain't getting traded or whatever, but I hope at least the college games give us what we got or something close to it last week because this sport is awesome and it's been incredible. So, peace.